This is Kelly the Kingfisher from the Watercolor Masterclass, not looking very much like a watercolor because it's missing something. It's missing that watercolor paper texture, plus also a little bit of the chaos that you do get with watercolors. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pinch it a little bit because I want to see all of the image on my screen because I might have to do some resizing for the things I'm going to bring in. Check my layers. I want any new layers to go above all the painting but underneath any color swatches I've got, because I don't want the things that are coming in to interfere with my color picking on that layer. So I'll turn that off for now. The topmost paint layer is selected, and then I'm going to come to my wrench icon, add as selected, and I'm going to insert a file. Now you can go off and search paper texture files and you probably find some watercolor paper textures that you can drag and drop in. They will probably be white, but then you darken them, but I'll show you how you do that. I'm going to use the Overlays and Marks folder for my Drippy Cat Art Studio, and I want paper gray overlays. And I've got a whole load of watercolor papers here. So let's try A4 Handmade Large Grain. Tap on that, it loads up, and I get this. It is not a white file that you make darker, it is gray file, which I'm going to stretch out. Then come to my layers panel, and I'm going to come to this little N sign, tap on it. Now, most people who supply textures provide very light colored textures, and then they make them darker by using something like multiply or color burn or linear burn. They can work, but I prefer to do something different. Can I just quickly zoom in a little bit so you can see this? Off and on again, and all of a sudden looking much more like a watercolor painting. But tap on that letter there, the O. I prefer to use the contrast layer blend modes. That will be either overlay or soft light, which is subtler, hard light, which is quite a bit harder, maybe the linear light. Woohoo! Mainly, it's going to be either overlay or soft light. Overlay is a bit stronger. I will go with that. And the reason I prefer to use a gray file and set it to something like overlay is because what this is doing is emulating the effect of light hitting a painting at a slight angle so that all the little ridges and valleys of that nice paper texture you painted on, and those little darker areas, that's the little valleys of the paper which are a little bit in shadow, but the brighter areas, those are the tiny hills on your paper texture which are receiving more light, and that is why I prefer to use overlay. Because if your imported texture is very light with darker bits, you only get to make the painting underneath darker. But this way, because I'm using grey, the darks get darker, but the lights get lighter. So I think it makes for a more interesting texture. Let's turn this off for a second and back on again. If you decide you want it stronger, you can just swipe to the left and duplicate, because layer blend modes stack on top of each other. If you decide that is too strong, let's take the opacity down to 0 and gradually dial in the extra texture that I want, maybe about there. But we can go further with this. Let's zoom out so that I can resize properly. I'm going to come back and I'm going to insert file again. But this time, rather than using a paper texture, I have files that I've created. I sat down with a watercolor brush on some larger than A3 color paper and I created a whole load of different watercolor textures. Like, for example, watercolor granulations 02. Tap on that. I will drag this out. Don't ask me how I did it. It's a mixture of traditional art plus some trade secrets with this. Remember, we can stack, so I'm going to tap on the N and I'm going to turn this into one of the layer blend modes. That is looking very strong all of a sudden, so I'm going to turn off that middle overlay image. It's still looking very strong, so let's try soft light. That's taming it a little bit more. I can alter the opacity like this, but let's zoom in and see what we've got with this granulating texture. Let's move into here, and this is without it. Still with that paper texture, but with the granulated texture, you're getting the effect of how watercolor pulls in the valleys of the paper. So with some heavily textured paper and granulating watercolor paints, because not all of them are, you get this kind of effect pretty much at the press of a button. Those paper files I used were part of the Drippy Cat Art Studio. Check out the links below, and if you can hit like and subscribe, that would do me a huge favor. Thanks for watching.